Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Paid Search Podcast. My name is Jason Rothman. As always, I'm joined by the great Chris Schaefer. Chris, how's it going today?
I'm doing great, Jason. Happy new podcast day to you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Any news? Anything exciting since I last talked to you?
Um, no, not much. What about you? What kind of question is that?
I
It's
you
just
always
teeing me up
you
for a bummer question. Come on.
yeah you always ask me. Usually I'm the topic each week of like what weird thing is Chris gonna say.
Mm.
I'm just teeing you up.
Well, it definitely hasn't been a haircut for you.
Yeah. Well, hey, my hairdresser's still learning.
Is
She's
that a new
really
haircut?
no.
Okay.
This
It
no.
looks like you need a haircut.
Yeah, I need a haircut.
Okay.
Thanks, though. It's important that people know that I look bad on an audio podcast.
It's not
Thanks.
just audio. We got YouTube. Big world out there on YouTube,
Yeah,
Chris.
yeah.
Chris, what are you seeing out there? What are you hearing? Google Ads. A lot of talk these days. Artificial intelligence, marketing slowing down because the economy.
Yeah.
What are you seeing out there?
I'll tell you.
A lot of talk. You know what I mean? Everybody just talks, but I want to know what you're actually seeing.
It's everybody has questions about what's right for me. That's the biggest thing that I like. People are like, should I use this? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I use this kind of maximum target? And they can't ever get the name right. And I'm like, do you mean performance max? They're like, oh yeah, should I do that? Should I do a search campaign? Should I get on YouTube? Should I do remarketing? I mean,
Should I do Bing?
yeah. People are like, they just choices, Jason.
A lot of
So
choices, yeah. A lot of
many
choices and a lot of noise out there too.
yeah, a lot of advice. People just have lots of advice to give, and it's tough to know who to listen to for sure.
Well, you can listen to us, and I think what we're trying to do, we're not trying to just give every answer to every question in the world about this industry. We're just talking about topics, talking about the episode, talking about what's on the table in front of us here today. Been seeing a lot of the listeners out in the wild, people coming up to me telling me they love the show.
Really,
And it's good to hear from everyone. Yeah.
that's
Sarah, I saw at the airport in Washington, D.C. last weekend.
Oh,
And
you're
she
serious?
stopped me. Yeah. I was in D.C., quick 2-day trip, little conference, and I'm back. But we see you guys out there. We hear from you, and it's great. So, Chris, we're talking about either 4 unique solutions from Google Ads, which that was a working title.
Yeah.
I
know.
I like that. How's this? There's always a solution with Google Ads. Isn't that the truth?
That's okay. That's a very okay. You're the title writing guru, so I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. So there's always a solution with Google Ads. Chris, I'm going to need you to step on that mic a little bit. You sound like a 4-year-old here. Let's deepen that voice, straighten up, broaden those shoulders.
I'll hit the man.
Yeah, I
I'll
can't
hit
hear
the
you.
man button.
Can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. You hit that before CrossFit?
No.
Okay. Yeah. You doing a lot of CrossFit, or are you taking some time off?
Oh no, time off. Why would I take time off to get
I don't know.
weak and not be able to lift mass?
Let me ask you this: you've been doing this show for 6 years. You've been doing CrossFit for
like
throughout this whole period.
Yeah.
Are your numbers going down?
They're plateauing. Yeah.
Okay.
That happens when you get old.
Someone hit me with some truth the other day. They were like, "You're going to be 48 in 12 years or something like that." And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine.
It won't take me that long to get there, but yeah.
You're going to be in your mid-50s in 12 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's fine.
Do you really think that's how it works? Because it's very hard to see that right now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I very well could see us here 12 years from now still doing this. I very well could see that scenario.
It's
hard to picture me 48 and you 55.
I have a theory that every 10 years life kind of resets. Every 10 years you look back at 10 years ago and you think you lived nothing like what you lived like 10 years before this.
Different person every decade.
Different person every decade.
I think a famous podcaster once said that.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they must be smart. I didn't realize I stole that.
Yeah. You didn't steal it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What year are we going on here? We're going to come up on our 10-year not too long, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know you. If you keep
You
me
got
around
something?
that long,
Okay.
we'll
Okay.
see.
You look like you were thinking about before you said something. Don't think, just talk. You're podcasting here, Chris. Don't think, just talk.
Just talk.
But why don't you just talk a little bit more, talk about Optio, and then we'll get into 4 or 5 specific scenarios with Google Ads where we run into these problems a lot. Advertisers have a big problem. They don't think they can get done what they need to get done inside of Google
Yeah.
Ads. And then where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a Chris Schaefer, there's a way. And Chris, you've come up with 4 solutions to these common problems, and we're going to share those right after this.
Yeah, I want to tell you guys about Optio. That's opteo.com/PSP. It is an exclusive offer you will only hear and have access to if you go to that URL that I said there. It's in the description. You can click on it and take advantage of this amazing Google Ads only software. Okay, this is specifically designed for you. It's designed for the manager who wants to get more done, who's asking questions, who's trying to figure out, how do I improve this? How do I improve that? What don't I know? What am I not checking in Google Ads? And it's an amazing software because it does everything from individual keyword bids to writing new ads. A couple of weeks ago, we featured this amazing little tool where you can go in and it will help you write ads, create ads in a whole new way. This kind of tool does not exist anywhere else with this ad creating tool, and they're doing this all the time. They're expanding and adding new features. I'm sure we'll hear more about those coming up through the year, and it does a ton of other things to help you optimize your Google Ads accounts. You can try this amazing tool for 8 weeks, for 2 months, entirely free. If you go to optio.com/PSP, use the little chat box down at the bottom of the window. Let them know you heard about it from the Pay Search podcast, and they'll give you that extra month.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead and just step a little closer to that mic for me.
What the heck with the mic thing?
While we're there, just a little bit to the right with your.
Is this a bit? Is this a thing?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Relax. No, the first time it wasn't, but then I've seen some podcasts where the host, like, he's always telling the guest to move a little bit this way, get a little bit closer to the mic, and I think there's some kind of weird power move there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, just when they're starting to make a point, he's mentions like, could you? Yeah.
I think there's also something weird going on, like them saying do something and then them doing what they said, and then it's weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got 4 problems here, Chris. The first problem is how to test different landing pages with Google Ads, but it goes a little bit more specific than that. It's not just landing pages, but it has to do with domains.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what this problem is?
So, Jason, I'm sure you've run into this issue before. I've had clients that might have a different domain. Maybe they've created something that's a content-based blog and it's on a different domain, or they want to try an unbounce page and they have not set it up so that it reroutes to a subdomain on their own website. So they literally have to send it to unbounce or some other landing page thing, or maybe they're selling something on a completely different site, completely different domain. Great. But the problem is, as soon as you have a different domain and you are essentially wanting to advertise that same thing with the same keywords, but just on a different domain, and you don't want to stop the other ads on that first domain, you can't just duplicate the campaign and run those 2 campaigns together with different domains. You're going to have a lot of cannibalization. You're going to have issues. So the question is, how do you run the same keywords across 2 different campaigns, 2 different domains, 2 different websites, when in Google Ads you can't have an ad pointing to one domain in the same ad group, and then a second domain in the same ad group as that. So it's an issue that I've had several times. I mean, I'll tell you one example. I had a client that wanted to sell their product on their own website, and they also wanted to sell their product on Amazon. How do you accomplish that and not just deal with constant cannibalization? There's a very unique way to do that in Google Ads. You basically set up the solution here is you set up an experiment.
Yeah, and I think some people would push back and say, "Well, why should I set up an experiment? Why should I do things that way when I could just copy and paste a campaign, run a second campaign with that second domain in there, and if the budget's $100 a day, give one of them $150 and the other $50." And what's tricky about that is there will be cannibalization that goes on, but you won't realize it because one of those two campaigns, the keywords in that campaign will get a better ad rank because Google Ads will like that domain better than the other domain. And you won't be able to really see where that plays out. You can go look in all the quality scores and break those columns out for landing page experience, but I don't think that's really feasible to do over a bunch of keywords, and that would change all the time. So, and it might be something where they both say good or average,
Yeah.
but one is a better 10-digit score behind the scene, 10 decimal point score behind the scenes. So yeah, I agree that experiment is the right way to do this. You got a big problem though, Chris, if you're in this spot, and hopefully the experiment can help you. But I've been in these spots where an advertiser has like their core domain and then they sell some e-commerce products on like a different domain that's very close to their original domain. But I feel like anytime I've been in this spot, there was a lot of uncertainty around the Google Ads account and the performance of that account. Would you feel like this is something that's, maybe red flag is too hard of a word, but it's a cautionary sign that like, hey, um, you've really got to dial this in, and it shouldn't be so up in the air thinking that, oh, this other domain might totally work better. Isn't it a bad sign to you?
Yeah, yeah. I think I think making any assumptions in Google Ads, assuming that something's going to be better or this is a good thing, or this has never worked, so I'm not going to try it here. Any assumptions, good or bad, is a bad thing. You should always test, and that's the reason I love experiments, is because there is no cleaner way to decide is going to work better than the other thing by setting up an experiment and running them side by side and then comparing the results within the same timeline. The great thing about the experiment is you don't have to pause one to run the other. They both run concurrently, and I think that's awesome.
And different domains. What would you look for in that experiment? What metrics are you using to judge which domain is doing better?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully you have conversions. So, I mean, for me, you're looking for either something like bounce rate or conversion rate, or whatever you're hoping to accomplish with that different domain. If it's a different page, a different brand, different messaging, a different call to action, you're looking for whatever it is, and hopefully it's going to be cost per conversion, conversion rate, return on ad spend. Whatever's the key metric for you.
Yeah, the one other thing I'd throw out there though is there's a lot of tricky stuff going on these days with Google Ads, and you put a new domain in there. I'd be looking for impressions / being able to spend the full budget that you're trying to spend / overall feel of, when I turn this on, is it running as powerfully as I think it can run? May not make sense to a lot of people, Chris, but does that make sense to you given how much is going on with responsive ads and like we talked about last week, variant keywords? It just seems like you might be getting a worse ad rank score, worse quality score. Maybe you get a nice cost per conversion, but you may not be able to utilize the platform as much as the higher ad rank domain did. And you would feel that with impressions, overall conversion volume. And just if you could spend the budget before and you can't now, that might be one of the things going on. Do you think that's valid to look for these days, given how tricky things are?
I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, I didn't really consider it. I mean, knowing something makes a difference on the domain, I don't really consider that. I consider more about what is the strength of a website and how well is that website tying into the quality score? Does it pass landing page experience? Is it bad, average, or good on landing page experience? I've never really considered it to be a domain thing. I considered it more to just be, is that page good, bad, or average?
Another thing people would have to consider, given that it's a totally different domain, is speed. Could be impacting
that does
quality
factor.
score as well. Yeah.
Yes, that does factor into it. Absolutely.
But that's a nice thing. You run an experiment, you pick the metrics you want to judge it on, and then maybe the slower domain actually gets a higher conversion rate. So then you fix that site up, or you take what you learned
Yeah.
about conversion rate optimization from that domain and put it on the faster site. So experiment's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the second problem here that advertisers can run into is basically how to get in front of the deepest funnel traffic that's ready to buy. You have some keywords where um, people are searching, but you don't know if they're exactly ready to buy the product or service at that moment versus doing research versus making their list. Moving business, I would say, like moving companies is more of a making a list, doing research. It's not saying everyone doing that search is in that mindset in that part of the funnel, but a large percent of the traffic are, versus higher movers or moving quotes or moving companies in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So if you're in a spot where you have to target those more open keywords, because maybe the deep funnel keywords don't exist or they're super low volume, and you have to get some of that not ready to buy traffic mixed in with that ready to buy traffic, you don't want to do that because you don't want that not ready to buy traffic. So what do you do?
Yeah, this is a really common issue, I would say, where there's a ton of search volume for something. There's a lot of
Well,
research.
I'm glad you qualified it because I was about to slam you.
Yeah.
I was about to slam you if you just came up. Chris, if someone came up with what you're about to say and we were in a meeting at a Google Ads agency and we just got done playing a little ping pong,
Right.
and then we
Yeah.
got done
Having
going
a
out for a
soda.
group movie. Yeah, then we had our soda break, and
Yeah.
then we got done having lunch, and then it
Ping
was after
pong.
lunch, so we needed a little breather. Back to the ping pong, the
Yeah.
rematch.
Yeah.
All right, the other side won. Now we got to do the best of three. Speaking of three, it's 3 o'clock. Team meeting,
Quick meeting.
quick meeting,
3-hour meeting.
and it's Friday, so let's clock out at 4. So
That's
I
it.
guess we're not
That's it.
talking about Google Ads,
That's the
but
whole day.
but let's say you do get a meeting in there at some point to talk a little Google Ads, and someone brings up this problem, and someone else at the table goes, well, you could just layer on an in-market audience and do targeted instead of observation. I would get up,
Mm-hmm.
I would fire them first, and then I would slap them because I
Yeah.
didn't slap you when you were an employee. We can't get into that
Yeah, we
nonsense.
can't.
I
Yeah.
slapped you out on the street,
After. Yeah.
man on man, mano y mano, and in a lot of states, I guess that's apparently legal. That's what we found out throughout like 2020 and the
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
Just dudes were, you remember that? Dudes would just be
Yeah.
fighting in the street. And we all
It's like,
found out like in some
yeah,
cities,
2020. It's totally fine.
it's
Yeah.
totally fine. And like the cops don't step in if both
Yeah.
combatants agree.
It's a weird.
We found that out.
Yeah.
I didn't
Strange
know that
world.
growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how strange the world is anymore versus, I mean, maybe it's just us. That's what I've been thinking lately, Chris. I'm walking around, I'm just going, maybe it's us. But yeah, so I slapped you after I fired you because in a lot of cases, this isn't a real answer because the volume's going to be too small. And when we're at that Google Ads meeting, we need answers that are actually going to affect the account. So go through this solution again, Chris, and then we'll talk about the big pitfall you have to watch out for.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, this is something that I would propose if there's plenty of search volume. So
National advertiser.
Yeah, national. This is not a local, small, little kind of thing. This is something where you're doing national, maybe even worldwide, and you are, only scraping just the very top of the potential funnel of traffic that can come in from this. You're getting a 10%, 20% impression share, and you'll never be able to, spend enough money to get all the impression share. So what do? Well, you start dissecting and going vertical into some of these by using an audience. An example that I've been doing, having some amazing results with it, is in the real estate arena. Google knows a lot about people that are, looking for certain things, whether people are looking for investment, whether people are just looking for homes, people looking for commercial properties. There's lots of different segments within the audience where you can say, only show me people who are looking for this. And by doing that, then you can use some more generic terms,
broad keywords,
and get some great results. I've been just destroying this campaign, just doing an amazing turnaround from what was just kind of a bland set of keywords by using in a targeted audience. And to be clear, what I'm referencing is a in-market audience. Those are some of my favorites. They're specific audiences in Google Ads that you can change to a targeted audience. And what happens is when Google shows an ad, the person both has to search the keyword and they have to be within that in-market audience. And an in-market audience just basically means Google's seen what they've been searching for, what they've been looking for, pages they've been going to, and said, it looks like this person's in market for a home, or this person's interested in investment, real estate investment or something like that, and then they'll put them in that in-market audience, and boom, you've taken a potential impression size of millions and reduced it down to just a few 100,000, and it can be a whole lot more impactful without the same amount of budget requirement.
Yeah, if they're in the market for a new home purchase to be buying a home, and you throw on crazy keyword, but you throw in houses in phrase match,
right? Oh gosh,
Whoa. Or houses in Houston broad match, pretty open. And what is the definition of a keyword where some people are ready to buy and some people aren't? Like, that's another name for a broad keyword.
Yeah.
So I really like this idea. But the trick there is that you have to use a targeted audience as opposed to observation.
Yes.
And another place you could use an experiment, and very much makes sense. However, the one risk here is that your volume is going to be too low. So if you're already in a low volume situation, small location, very, very niche industry, that's an area where it doesn't preclude you from doing this, prevent you from doing this, but it would just be something to look out for. Like, hey, my volume might drop.
Yeah.
Another thing you might have to layer this on with is higher keywords. You're going to limit the amount of people you can show up to only the best people. Those people might be converting at high rates in other people's accounts. Therefore, other people's accounts might be, whether it's manual or automated, bidding a lot on that traffic. And all of a sudden, if you lock it down to only the best traffic, only the best people, you might have to pay more than you had been paying. So that's another thing to consider, but it totally could be worth it because you'll actually get conversions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like you said, a lot of times this is a bad decision for a lot of people. Don't think that you can take a good campaign and add a couple of audiences and it just works. Sometimes there is not just a perfect audience for you. And if the audience doesn't exist, you can't just throw in any old audience and expect your market to be represented by that audience. So it can be very detrimental because you essentially eliminate all of your potential customers by choosing some obscure audience that doesn't really fit. It really requires that Google already has some type of audience that works for you.
Potential second slap-worthy offense is if you take a good campaign and layer on a targeted audience on top of it to a campaign that was already good. That might not be a good idea because it's hard to make a campaign really, really good, and that could totally mess it up if you try to do that. But I'd say you could always experiment with it. So a third problem here is how to run Google Ads for your small business with a really, 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 really small budget. Sometimes people get intimidated, Chris, and they call me and say, "Oh, Jason, we're only spending $50,000 a month.
Oh, so
Can you
small.
work with us?"
Oh,
and I say,
gross.
We can try to fit you in. What is a small budget where people are intimidated? Because I do run into a lot of people who are intimidated about getting on Google Ads with what they think is a small budget. So where would your threshold be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't, Jason, I'm pretty much open to anything.
Okay. I'll send a lot of people who are spending $150 a month.
Absolutely. As long as they're willing to pay my fee, that's great. Absolutely. $150.
Separate line items there.
Yeah.
No, but I would say I run into this in a valid way where advertisers have less than $500 a month. I run into this in an invalid way where some advertisers have $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, and they think it's a small budget for whatever reason. And to me, that's not. To me, my line is about $1,000. Does that make sense?
The thing is, you can't. I don't throw any idea to like maybe 500 seems like it's very little, but just like you said, some industries it can go quite far. But then 500 in your, let's say you're doing mortgages, you're trying to get people
Hmm.
who, mortgage companies near me kind of stuff. That thing's not going to go anywhere. The cost per click for stuff like that, or maybe you're doing something around lawyers or something, give me a break. No way. It's just not going to fly. So, 500 could be a lot, could be a little, depending on the industry. And the fact is, whether it's a lot or a little, is, you're going to have to figure that out. And then if you figure out that it is very, very little, the problem is if you're running something that you're very limited on, the cool thing is, even though you have a super small budget, there are things you can do to whittle down who you're going to show up for without compromising your keywords and compromising your bids as much. Okay, so let's say that your minimum, in order to get some clicks, you're going to have to be paying $10, $15 per click. If you're spending $300 a month, that's $10 a day. I mean, like that's very, very little. So you can't really afford to get a click a day here if you run 7 days a week. So example for a solution here would be use your ad schedule to cut off, 4 days of the week. You only run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you cut off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So now you've taken the budget from those days and you've added that into your other 4 days that you are running. Another suggestion, let's say you decide you only want to show up on computer. That's usually a smaller segment of the market. If you don't show up on mobile, usually it seems like it's running pretty heavy on mobile nowadays. Computer is not as much. So by eliminating mobile entirely and only showing up on desktop computer, then, that's a smaller segment. And you can whittle these down in many different ways to shrink your potential audience, but still keep your same bids, still keep your same keywords, and not have to compromise what you're looking for.
Yeah, the ad schedule one is I would say the biggest one. It's definitely the primary one because that can give you a larger daily budget, and that's usually the biggest problem people run into when they have small budgets is the daily budget becomes too small compared to the realistic cost per click, and the system kind of trips on itself. So the schedule one can control for your daily budget and give you a larger daily budget. Chris, I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with 1 day a week. Like if you
Sure.
do have $300 a month, $250 a month, like a storage, moving, roofers. I'm running into this with the roofer I work with. They have like $1,500 a month, and I don't know what's gone on in the roofing business in the last few years, but man, it was surprisingly expensive on the cost per click, like surprisingly. And to counter for that, we run Monday through Wednesday because it's not realistic to split the budget up over 20 days a month. We need more like 12 days a month, and it works for them. So that's that first big one. And then what you're talking about, devices, demographics, you can even look at chopping off a bunch of keywords that you don't want and only running on your best keywords. The way I look at that is you have a very, very small budget. So the reframe of that, the positive of that is that you get to run only on the best possible traffic that's out there, and you kind of get your choice of things because you're way smaller than the market size. So embrace that, take advantage of it. And I'm not just saying this to say this. I really, really don't think there's like anything wrong with running $100, $200, $250 a month on Google Ads. It's not usually the people we work with, Chris. Like it's not usually. That's pretty small. Anybody who's 500 a month, 1,000 a month, that's kind of I think as low as I usually go. I don't usually work below 500.
Yeah.
And even under 1,000 is somewhat rare. But for a business that's wanting to get started on Google Ads, that's not relying on Google Ads, it's just adding to their portfolio of lead sources and marketing. Nothing wrong with $100, $200, $300 a month, running it the best way you can. You set up some good settings in there. You come back to it 2 years later, you've got a lot of data to work with, and hopefully it's proving itself to be a good source of leads, and then you can add the budget when you're comfortable.
Yeah. There's one thing I'll say about small budgets. It's assuming you have great keywords, great ads, you've done your work, even if you spend a couple $100, you're still going to get the same quality of traffic. It's not like Google doesn't deliver as good of traffic for someone who's spending $200 as they do 2,000 or
just keep your ads running. Just keep it on.
It just lasts longer if you have more budget. It's still this. You're still tapping into the same Google.com. So this solution can help you to whittle down and keep things a little simpler, a little more streamlined for that small budget.
Yeah, totally nothing wrong with it. We're gonna take a break here, Chris.
That's good. We're gonna
that Texas sun must be setting. We're battling.
Yeah, it's like right
daylight here. We're like a photo shoot, and we're battling the daylight here. So we got to take a break, but we got to take a quick break so we can get back before we get that Texas sunset.
Yeah, it's gonna hit soon. Better hurry.
And we'll be back right after this.
Welcome back. I want to remind you about our sponsor, Optio. They are the smarter way to manage Google Ads. They give you smart recommendations that improve Google Ads performance. You can spend less time buried in the performance data and make more time and get more work done to drive more conversions for your Google Ads campaign. You can start a 30-day free trial if you go to the normal Optio.com. Like all those other losers out there that don't know about getting the double free trial, the 2-month free trial, because they're listening here at optio.com/PSP. Use the chat window at the bottom to tell you heard about it from the Paid Search Podcast.
Okay, Chris, so we have one more problem that we run into often with advertisers. How to make the most of Google Ads for your small business if your website is really bad. Run into this a lot in the moving business.
Yep.
They've been busy out there moving, running their business, and they have not
time.
put a lot of time into their website. Google Ads is cost per click. Cost per click, when they see your ad and they click on it and go to your website, you get charged money to your website, conversions on the website. Everyone's thinking about the website. What do you do if your website is not good?
And I'll tell you, Jason, sometimes it's a revelation to clients that I get in touch with, that I talk to, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is really bad. Some people are listening and don't know that they fit into this category, don't realize that their website's really bad, and they should listen to this solution. But just real briefly, I'll give some like, Jeff Foxworthy, long time ago. You might be a redneck.
I was about to say a long time ago.
Yeah, you might be a redneck if. So this is going to be, you might have a bad website if. Okay. So if you're using, let's see, if you don't have a form on your page, whatever they land on, if you don't have some kind of form or some kind of thing so someone can either purchase or fill out a form, and they have to actually click and go to a different page in order to fill that form out, you might have a crappy website.
You might have a crappy website if you look on your website and you see Latin from the default of the website setup.
The Lipsomorium, whatever it is, You might have a bad website if every one of your images is a free stock image.
You might have a bad website if the website does not mention the term that your business is in, your industry, anywhere on the website. You might have a bad website if your website does not mention the cities and state that you do business in.
You might have a bad website if I have to ask you what it is that you actually do, even though I'm looking directly at your website, and I have to have you explain it to me, because that happens a lot.
You might have a bad website, yeah. You might out there.
That felt so nice.
You might have a bad website if the phone number is down in the corner and is in the same color, just a different shade as your background color, even though you want to get phone calls.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to just spend like a whole podcast episode just talking about bad websites. And
the reason we don't tell it's difficult to tell people to their face their website or is not good and Google Ads may never work for them
Yeah.
is because sometimes that's met with the, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me the truth. I'm working on my website now, or I'm going to go find somebody, or do you know anybody? And then sometimes it's met with, what do you mean it's not going to work for me? Why wouldn't it work? You don't know what
Yeah.
you're doing. You can't make it work. And it's
Yeah.
met with anger.
Yeah.
And you don't
They
know what
take
you're dealing with out there sometimes.
take it
Chris.
personally. They take it
Yeah.
personally. My son built this for me 10 years ago.
That's another thing you might run into.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Google Ads won't work unless it will.
Yeah. So you don't have a website that is working, or maybe you might doubt that your website isn't a good website, and maybe you shouldn't send people to it. And all you're wanting to do is just get your phone to ring. And there are a lot of industries. This tip doesn't fit for everyone, but there are a lot of industries that this could apply to. Jason mentions the moving industry a lot, where people just need to reach out, ask someone, a very local type of thing. There could be some finance industries where you just need to, reach out to someone and ask questions about, certain finance things, mortgage. Can you help me do a mortgage? Realtors. Oh, goodness, it's really getting to me.
So your people, they might need a call about a mortgage. The website's no good.
Yeah.
Google Ads costs a lot of money sometimes. What are you going to do here?
Yeah. So getting the phone to ring is really all you care about, and call ads are a really good solution for something like this. The fact about the call ads, a couple things that are, the truth about call ads is this: they do cost more. The cost per click, I find, is more expensive for call ads. So you're going to tend to pay a higher cost per click because it's an interactive ad. It's an ad that has to have some type of interaction, so it's a different special kind of ad. So it's going to show a little bit higher. I assume that's the reasoning for it. I'm not. Maybe it has to do with the fact that there is no quality score associated with it.
I also think it gets you closer to the conversion action, because instead of clicking to the website and then performing a conversion action, they're calling, which gets you pretty close to what you want. So it's more like paying per lead almost than paying per click. The other thing is, if you ever try to run call ads and you try to do low bids and show up at the bottom, I mean, on Google Ads desktop on computer, you can get away with an average position of 3.5 because you're still at the top, but on mobile, those first 2-3 ads take up so much space that it seems like you're very low if you're not bidding very high, if that makes sense.
So you're going to have to bid aggressively. You're going to have to be
It's very
comfortable
different with the bidding. Yeah, we've both seen that.
But the fact is, if you can get those ads up there, when someone clicks on it, it's just going to call you. It goes straight to a phone call. Now, the other bad news is this. I can't mention all this without saying they can just hang up. They can just cancel the call, and you're still going to be charged for it. So that's a bad thing. But the fact is, that doesn't happen every time.
Still better than your crappy website.
Yeah. When people go to your website and they're like, oh my gosh, what is this trash? You're still not getting calls there, but at least you can get calls directly here. It's still a better solution. So this could be a great solution for those that have websites, don't have websites at all, or the websites that do have are just crappy. They're just not going to be utilized at all.
Just ran into this small budget national advertiser, wants to get clients nationally, and the website is bad, and they know it's bad. And they even brought it up to me, and it's just blatantly bad. And I told them, look, if we spend your small budget per month nationally on this website, you're just not going to get the kind of leads you want. It's just going to be a waste of money. So let's try it with call ads, and that's what we're doing. So it's definitely a good option when it's a good option, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of businesses that don't really have to have a lead form. They can just take phone calls. So it could be a perfect fit for a lot of situations.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Well, we are going to cut what we need to cut there, Chris. That medical episode we had,
live
here on the show.
If
It
you
was
say
a
so.
cough. It went on for about 17 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think it was
But
quite that. Okay.
we were. I thought it was. We could go back and watch it.
Yeah. Well.
But we'll cut that and we'll recover here. But Chris, where can people find you?
Yeah. You can find me by just going to my name. I have my own digital home where I reside. I put my face out there, and you can see me at chrisschaefer.com. The link is in the description. And Jason, where can people find you?
No plugs for me this week. Right here on the Paid Search Podcast. This is my home. This is my digital home.
Oh,
I just sit in this box for 23 and a half hours, and then you come back, and I'm here.
are you doing a comedy tour right now, or any book tours or anything?